Welcome to Cultural Conversations with the Mississippi State University Libraries. I'm Fred Smith, your host, and my guest today is Chip Templeton with the Charles H. Templeton Sr. Music Museum. Welcome, Chip.
Thank you, Fred. I'm happy to be here.
Tell us about the collection just from the beginning on, because I know this was a collection that your dad started and you've continued, and it's gone on for well over 40 years now. How did it get started?
Well, let's see how I can do that in a nutshell. That's a hard thing to do. First of all, Dad was a business person, and he liked to do many different types of businesses. And one of those, he set out to make a living actually collecting and buying and trading musical instruments, sheet music, records, and this sort of thing. And over a period of time, you set aside those things that you wouldn't trade for and decide that they're keepers. And you feel like that you've done most of what you wanted to do with it. And so you have a collection then of something that is a real treasure. And he called his collection the business of music. He was just really enamored, for many reasons, with the history of the music business in the United States, and particularly starting with the Edison invention of the phonograph in 1877. That really got him excited.
So it goes way back to the very beginning.
It does. I mean, there are pieces in the collection that are much older than that. But, in today's world, I think almost all Americans connect with the current music or the genre on which they grew up. And if you put that in reverse and you go back to where that started from, there are kind of two key periods. The first period is 1899, when Scott Joplin, that we can talk about here in a little bit if you like, made Ragtime the first million seller of something. And so that became a genre of music of which the rest of our music in America since has sort of built upon. So that's one key time period. And the other is the Edison invention, which was not started with the idea that it would have anything to do with music.
Now, would the Joplin have been a record, a 78, or would it, what sort of format?
Okay. The word ragtime kind of became involved on covers of sheet music.
Okay.
About 1896. And that word was used loosely. It wasn't really, it didn't connect with anyone on exactly what that meant. It was just something as a marketing term to put on something or at the end of a phrase. So a young African-American composer from a small town in Sedalia, Missouri, wrote that song, the Maple Leaf Rag. And that is the song that sort of set American popular music, what we have today. The beginnings of that. And it started from the grassroots and worked up to the cities. It didn't start like we think of with the cities and working down to all of we folks in the rural parts of the community. That's what makes it truly American music in the study. And that started really the pop culture, because jazz, blues, all that were evolving about that time all started and were built upon that. So when you talk about ragtime, you're really talking about blues, jazz, rock and roll, all the other things that we think of as the different genres of American music.
Now, is there a cutoff on this collection of when you end it? And I know it's not a rock and pop collection, so.
Well, it could be. You never know what could be added in the future. It is a living collection.
Room for growth, I guess.
We have recently added to that, which I'd like to talk about that if we get a chance to before. But if I could, I'd like to go back to the Edison part, because in 1877, 1878, when the phonograph started, his idea of that was to be something that a court reporter would use. Instead of writing it down, let's have these recordings. And so this collection, which my parents in the mid-'80s gave the collection to the university. That's how it became the university's information. And then later it was moved to the MSU Mitchell Memorial Library, where it is today on the 4th floor.
It's a wonderful museum.
Well, thank you. We're very proud to have that within the where it really needs to be, and that's where people can really see it and come and enjoy it. And you can study it from so many different perspectives, as deep as you like it to be. It is a music collection, but it's really a business of music collection, and that's the point I wanted to make. If you see it through the lens of what this means for business, it created so many different opportunities for technology. The Edison invention of the phonograph, it was so simple then, I mean, for us to look at it now, but then that was the latest technology of what was out there. So it invented a totally industry for manufacturing the instruments, the various companies, much like we have Apple and Microsoft competed for the personal computer and so forth. So it's somewhat like going to the grocery store, and instead of you and I go shopping for food, let's go shop and look at it through the lens of marketing. And we see all the different industries that were started because of how we see things displayed, packaged, and so forth in the grocery store.
It really was a business.
Right. So not only that, but socially, it was tremendous because it gave opportunities for a lot of people that, again, grassroots. He gave them a way that could work their way up to, if you had a hit record or something you started, you could be in a small town and it worked to one metropolitan area, and that caught on, and it became a regional hit, and then finally a national hit, and so forth. So he gave opportunities for African Americans to be involved in a business setting, whether they be composers or any manufacturers or anything, as well as women. They give them opportunities to compose songs and make a living doing something with the music industry. So it could involve what's happening today. Mm-hmm. You never know. We could add some things, with iTunes and various things like that. The digitally, that is the latest thing now. But 10 years from now, it may be something totally different.
Right.
But all different sorts of records, the different sizes, from the flat disc to the toilet paper roll shaped, and the various sizes, they're all there for people to study and to understand how that's about. Because we all have a connection, I think, with music in some way in our life, and the Templeton Museum gives a great pathway for you to go and study it from whatever angle that you connect to, and then maybe challenge yourself to find a new way or something new that you haven't thought about and see it through a different way.
So there's really three different, we had talked one time and you had described it as a three-legged stool. And so there are actually three different pieces to the collection.
Yes, I'm glad that you mentioned that. So Dad thought of it as a three-legged stool, as you said. So one leg would be the sheet music. So you have the sheet music certainly has music inside, but it also has a cover on the front. Of course, you had artwork that had to be designed, all kind of technology for that, and what that can mean to sell the piece. It's about marketing and merchandising and selling the pieces. So you had sheet music, and you had recordings. So recordings could be in the various forms or shapes that we talked about. As far as sheet music in the collection, there's probably around 25,000 pieces, something like that.
That's amazing.
Which really, it doesn't take that much to get 25,000 pieces of sheet music, but if you try to find 25,000 pieces of collectible sheet music.
And that's with collecting anything, condition is the key.
Right, so you may go through thousands before you really kind of keep one.
And you
throw the rest of them some away, or you trade for others that you
But sometimes you have to buy something because you may never see it again, even with the condition.
That is true. There are about 10,000 recordings. The sheet music is digitally online, so one could go to our website and see most of the pieces. Some for copyright issues are not displayed, but you certainly can enjoy them from there. So one leg is.
Do you know what year that is?
I believe it's 1923.
Okay.
I believe.
So anything after 1923 would not be digitized and up.
Right.
Because of copyright.
Right. But one leg of the stool that you mentioned was the sheet music. The second leg is the recordings, and the third leg is the instruments. Now, Dad defined an instrument. It could be an instrument like you would play a musical instrument, but for the most part, they're the Edison phonographs or the various types of record players or devices. These could be piano rolls. Again, the piano roll industry was huge, so we have that's kind of considered part of the instrument leg, even though it's a separate object. That was sort of the beginnings, really, of maybe the computer industry, because you got the little holes that are punched in paper and someone figuring out that someone could actually go record a piece and it's on a piece of paper and you plug it into a piano player that mechanically plays
That
it.
was
And you're
amazing at the time.
right, and you're actually hearing the person who is playing it, which was generally someone that was a famous artist to do it. So you're hearing it the way they wanted to play it.
Why don't you show us quickly a few of the pieces that you brought?
Yeah.
Because these are absolutely gorgeous pieces of sheet music, and these are things that you've added just in the last year.
Yes, my wife Connie and I, in the last few months, we've also been collectors, and the joy of learning this collection, because this was Dad's collection, it was not my collection, but I've learned the collection over the years, and so I know what's missing, and I know what could be obtained if one wanted to do it. So Connie and I set out to do that, and we're happy to add. So I'm going to show you some of the pieces that we're adding. This is one right here called Weeping Willow Rag. This is a Scott Joplin piece. Again, 1899 is when he is the one who's credited. He's the king of ragtime. He's the guy that started all the American popular music, the first million seller and so forth. This was a piece written in 1903, and it's a very, very rare piece.
You would think, as popular as Joplin was, that there'd be lots of them around.
Well, the person who made him famous, such as Colonel Tom Parker made Elvis famous, was a guy named John Stark. And if you'll notice in fine print down here, he is not the person who published it. It was another composer, Val Aris Music Company, also of St. Louis, but a different company. So we don't have time to go into that story right now, why that's the case, but that's what makes this such a rare piece.
Well, Chip, I'd like to thank you for being here. This has been wonderful, and we'd love to have you come back, and we'll talk about a bunch of other things about the museum. And tell us quickly about the Ragtime.
Okay. Every year in the last weekend in March, we have a 3-day festival here at the library called the Charles Templeton Ragtime and Jazz Festival, and we hope that you'll come to that. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here.